So I am a clinical psychologist, and I license in 31 states now. I basically integrate anything that's a geek culture into a therapeutic practice. But all growing up through my childhood, all the way through undergrad, a master's program, everything else, has always been focused on why do video games matter?
I'll never tell.
Okay.
You're coming up with really good questions, things I haven't gotten before, which is fantastic.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the ProfNoctis Weekly Show. Today, as always, I am joined by my co-host, Evan. What's up, Evan?
Happy to be here. Very excited for this interview.
So happy to be here because today, they say you should never meet your heroes, but today we're meeting one of them because Anthony Bean, therapist, professor, faculty, and... we know him because of this little card deck that we have used on so many of these episodes. The creator or co-creator, I'm not really sure, of the Geek Therapy card deck for clients and therapists. We love this thing, and we love you, Anthony. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, it's a delight because Evan and I, since we started this show, we did what was called a mini game stretch break because, you know, like we do in classes or anything like that, it's like every now and then you just got to stand up and like give a stretch break. And so we would use your card deck as our mini game stretch break during our Final Fantasy VII podcast, where we would like badly sing the Gold Saucer music, and then we'd go into a mini game with your question.
Speak for yourself about the bad singing.
Yeah, well,
I nailed it.
Allegedly. Well, we're really excited to be here. And today, we're not talking about Final Fantasy VII, though it may come up a little bit. Today, we're talking about the lens of psychology, and we're talking about it in light of The Last of Us as we continue our Last of Us lecture series. So, Anthony, what we want to do today is just learn a little bit more about you, your origin, how you became the Geek Therapeutics guy, and then we'll talk about The Last of Us, okay? So, Anthony, give our listeners and our viewers a little bit of insight as to who you are and what you do.
Wow, okay. Yeah, this is it's a lot to cover. So I am a clinical psychologist, and I license in 31 states now. And I just passed California's exam a couple weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Let me tell you,
Very nice.
that one is the roughest out of all of them that I have taken.
Oh, really?
Is
I'm
it?
taking
Wow.
the EPPP all over again. It's really rough. And so we license in all those different states going forward, and home base is in Texas right now, Fort Worth, Texas. And I basically integrate anything that's a geek culture into a therapeutic practice. So things you guys have been doing with that card deck, that's stuff that we do all the time when our clients come on in and they focus in on kind of like what their main problems are. And a lot of them are geeks, nerds, gamers, and they come to us specifically because they want to know, why do I like some of these games over other ones? Why do I like TTRPGs over video games? Why do I like the LARP? And what about cosplay? All this stuff is like super, super big in their lives, and they want to understand why does it matter? Because if it matters to you as a listener, you're gonna know that like you've probably been ridiculed for, and you're like, that doesn't matter, and we're like, no man, it kind of does. It's kind of part of like how we all are as a person. I run four different businesses. I run a 501c3 nonprofit over here in Texas called the Telos Project. And so what we do there is we serve anyone, regardless of socioeconomic status, on the concepts of therapy, psychological assessment, and wraparound services as much as humanly possible that we can do with the services that we provide here.
Right.
We've grown that from me working that part-time in 2016 to 29 employees now, which is insane. And we're next year we'll have our 10-year anniversary of it, which is really, really exciting. Then, as you guys have mentioned, I also run Geek Therapeutics, which is our continuing education company. and it's been undergoing some fun internal restructuring stuff because it's growing so big, and it's a beast. It's taken on its own type of life, I would say. We have to restructure in order to make sure that it kind of goes forward, appropriately. Yeah. We're open now in physical locations in Colorado, Virginia, San Antonio, here in Fort Worth as well. So I mean, we're doing quite a lot there. And
soon in Alabama, right? You want to come out?
I actually have a client that's in Alabama, so he comes back every so often, and we worked really hard. He's big Destiny fan, and so he kind of when he moved from Arlington, Texas, all the way over to there, he had a real rough time because there's not a lot of stuff to kind of go in, and so we kind of work on what do you got to do, where do you got to do, how do you jump into a game with strangers online, and how is that different from what we're doing in real life? And so just kind of try to create those illusions for them in different ways. Then we have a publishing company, which we publish all of our peer-reviewed research called Leyline Publishing. And that's where, if you see us at conventions, you'll see all about the merchandise and everything that we do, and we pay people to write for us, and all sorts of good jazz always comes out every year. I think we always unveil anywhere from 10 to 25 new products a year, which is insane on lots of levels.
Unreal.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. There's no doubt about that. And one of the last thing I do is I also have a private practice where I do a lot of expert witnessing and kind of working with officers and police force and security for people that are in high risk situations in jobs, in order to make sure that they kind of stay stable, get the resources they need, and also can continue on with their jobs.
Wow.
You really need more initiative and ambition in your life, I think.
3 more of me, and I swear I could take over the world.
Seriously, I mean,
you're on your way.
This is really, really interesting, and just the way that you're able to see the various needs from the nonprofit to the local resources that you're pouring into, as well as at the national convention level. That's where you and I met at PAX East last year, and I was so flattered that you, when I emailed you, you remembered me. You're like, "Yeah, we met at PAX East." I'm like, and he's good with names, like with all of it. It's just incredible. So, thank you for what you do. And like, since we first heard of you and found out about you, we were like, this guy has to be on the show at some point. And so your spirit has been here through all of your resources. So it's awesome to actually get to have you here. I'm really curious, like, is this what you signed up for? Did you, like, as an undergrad, say, this is what I want to do? And how did this dream really evolve? What was the first inkling?
Man, so that is a good question. And do I feel like this is where I was meant to be? Yes. Do I feel like my wife likes to say is I am a tidal wave. It's either ride the wave or get out of the way. It's kind of like one of the ways that she describes me to people. And so one of my earliest memories is playing Adventure Island on the NES. And I still have that game, and I still hate that game just as much as I hated it back then.
Sure.
But I keep it because it has a nostalgia factor for me of that one.
Right.
And that one, that's very important for me to kind of keep. So one of my earliest memories is that, but all growing up through my childhood, all the way through undergrad, a master's program, everything else, has always been focused on why do video games matter. And for me, they've always given me a kinship to understand, I believe, myself in a different way, that the outside world, the things that we engage with every day, they're not always fun. They're not always entertaining. They're there for a purpose, but it's like, where do we get our drive from? For me growing up, that was video games. And so that's why my first love was Legend of Zelda. I beat the living crap out of all of them, even the randomizers. I love randomizers. They're so much fun because it really forces you to think differently about the game and do things in different ways that you didn't think you were going to be able to do. But with the right tools at your disposal, anything is possible.
Can you explain randomizers to people that may not know what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So N64's version, Ocarina of Time, is one of the, well, unless Nintendo took it down, which is always possible
Likely.
with their new lawyers, is one of the my favorite ones. And what happens in there is normally when you play a video game, you're going forward and everything is given to you at very specific intervals. Like say a tool, a sword, a hook shot for the game. In a randomizer, you might get the Master Sword in your first box that you open.
Wow. Okay.
In the first 2 to 3 minutes of the game, and then the rest of the game becomes a little bit easier. They might also give you a stick, and you got to find your way into the temple using a stick, which is not easy.
Streamer challenge mode. That's amazing.
Yeah, but I'm sensing a bit of a theme here because there's a high challenge that you put on yourself in video games, and it sounds like personally, professionally, you also enjoy kind of big challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about your personality? Give us some insights there. Do you set these high challenges because it feels like you get the best out of yourself there, or is it just an ambition thing? Tell us where you land on that, and why on earth do you subject yourself to that much torment?
Man, so that's also, it's funny because I'm a Jungian psychologist, and so I'm always going through what we call Jungian work on myself. And what we've discovered is exactly kind of what you just put into, in my opinion, good terms, is I'm really good at extremes, but once we get to the middle, I kind of get bored.
Yeah.
So like things just going straight, you're like, cool. What else can I put on here? Because things are going well. I'm finding I have myself having extra time. These things are all taken care of. What else are we gonna put on here? For me, I like to have a lot of things going on at once. It makes the day go by faster. But it also has a really big, I would probably say, pull for myself, an internal push to kind of be the best that I possibly can. And I have yet to find anyone that comes close to working on that same level, and that's okay. Ride the lightning.
What was that process of discovery like for you, though? Because I know folks and have worked with folks who have similar drive and work ethic, and I work in strong bursts. So Wade can tell you, I'm like all on with creative focus, or I am all spaced out and we're doing spontaneous stuff to explore creativity. And there was really not much in between for me. And so for you with that discovery process, one, you have mentioned your wife and you're married. So there's got to be parts of yourself that you've had to learn, understand, and cope with, or you have an extremely accommodating partner, probably both, right?
It's definitely both.
There's been some learned things as far as the endeavors that you have, the teams, 10 years of consistency with nonprofit work, right? You obviously are able to maintain relationships, but as I have known folks and listened to interviews with folks who share a similar drive and work ethic and desire for challenge, connecting the relationships along the way can be really challenging. What was that process of discovery like for you? And maybe tell us a little bit about kind of how that has helped you to grow and be successful in your roles now compared to maybe when you were younger.
So you're coming up with really good questions, things I haven't gotten before, which is fantastic. You are correct. So there's a lot of people. I would say I have lots and lots of acquaintances, hundreds upon hundreds. Do I have close friends? I probably have about a dozen very close friends where I feel like I can talk to them about kind of anything. My wife probably would have hundreds. So we were definitely two different personalities in that vein. And so for my discovery process, to learn that about myself, I had to really look at what kind of friendships have I held on to over my lifespan so far. What have I been like? Yeah, my life doesn't really change too much, and it kind of comes down to a lot of revolving types of people that come in through my life. I tend to work better when I'm involved in a business with someone. It tends to do a little bit better with keeping up the relationship. Because there's a reliance, there's a trust factor that kind of comes on in. Versus, let's say, someone that because I coach two soccer teams too,
Of course you do.
All my free time. To have one of them, the other coaches, because I'm the head coach, and so they're kind of like my assistants. To have them do things after the soccer season's done or in between seasons, like don't really talk. And there's differences of personalities, but it's also like they grew up differently from me, and they're very cliquish, and I don't care for so if kind of that makes sense. So it's kind of like that discovery process of knowing what works for you, what doesn't work for you, how do you engage with the people that matter, aka my wife, my kids, things like that. Where do I put the most effort into? Versus people are going to fall to the wayside, and it's okay that they fall to the wayside, because it's really about if they are meant to be there and kind of engaging in that world with you, right? Kind of a part of it. And I can tell you, when I go home to my hometown, Massachusetts, people are always like, "Hey, let's go out and do stuff," and I'm like, I don't really drink, so I don't. They're like, "Let's go out and have a drink." I'm like,
is that big in the Northeast, drinking?
Yeah.
Is that part of the? Is that part of that kind of culture?
Well, I mean, alcohol. We can get on a whole different tangent of like how that's so pervasive in the United States in a not so great way. But one of the things that we kind of find ourselves doing is like when we go home, when we go and find ourselves in that stuff, you start looking around and be like, wow, there's a reason I did so much to get out of here. Yeah. There's a reason that I don't really engage with some of these individuals anymore. Is it great to see them once a year? Sure. Can we do something that doesn't involve alcohol? That one's kind of on them a little bit more. And so it's kind of a unique experience, I think, to say that, we are a creation of what we kind of want to be.
Oh yeah. Well, and the Last of Us as a story deals a lot with that relationship management. Now it's in dire circumstances, right? But the psychology of it and the way that those relationships get together, which I know that we'll get to, I think has a lot of parallels, and there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from the story that are well illustrated in the text. Wade, I know that you have a lot of questions about the breadth of the products, especially with the other things like the Zelda books and all the different things, and how you arrived on The Last of Us. What are you curious about in that lane?
Well, I before we get to The Last of Us, I would be really curious, what project did you say, this is the one that I think I can integrate into my practice? Was there a game? Was there another form of media? Maybe it was tabletop. Really curious how you were like, this is the thing, I'm going to give it a shot. And did it work? Did you have to go back to the drawing board? What was that like?
Yeah, so I would probably say it's video games overall. That was my into this. The video games, hands down, are like one of my favorite things to do on a lot of levels when I have free time. Yeah,
do you still game?
I still game on occasion. So
what are you into right now? What are you playing right now?
If you ever see a Dog Balls 25 pop into your PS5, that's me. They haven't banned my name yet, so.
Well, it's a toy. I mean, we're talking about toys.
I mean, it's great when you're playing Helldivers 2 and someone's like, "Dog balls." That guy.
Like, that's
absolutely.
me.
Let's do this.
That's me. Hello.
You're calling on dog balls.
You'll never take my freedom. Is that what you've been playing, Helldivers 2?
That's what I play with a lot of my friends over here right now. Because we can just be silly. We're gonna be like, "Hey, man, watch this," and then we just blow everybody up, and they're like, "That was pretty cool."
It's perfect. When we found out that you can ride the mech if you go prone on top of it and crawl while it walks, we literally just were crying, laughing for hours, screaming at each other, riding the mech across the different levels, getting stomped by bugs. We love it. I love Helldivers.
Yeah, it's so worth it, and that I think that it's just a genius game of what they did, because they made, like Call of Duty and stuff like that. Like, yeah, sure, that's fun, but it's, in my opinion, it's kind of boring. This one, it is not boring. Yeah, sure, you're doing very repetitive things, but you're doing them in ways that you didn't think that you can do them the same way each time, because
it's
nothing
delightful satire with an Apocalypse Now setting that meets Starship Troopers. Like, it's just this perfect Venn diagram of fun.
Yep.
So you've done so many of these different things, starting with video games overall, but you've moved to more specific things like Zelda and Pokemon and ultimately The Last of Us. The Last of Us isn't what you started with as far as this like compendium, and I can see why. It's pretty intense. But it strikes me that maybe Zelda and Pokemon were more of like proofs of concepts, and then you kind of come to this Last of Us thing that's so rife with just overt psychological themes. When did you realize that you needed to go to The Last of Us specifically?
Oh, that's a good question. You are correct. It started with Zelda. Zelda is the first one that launched the entire psychology series that we kind of did. That one was a love, because that's my... I care very much for that game in a lot of ways. And so we have gone through like some of the powerhouses, obviously Final Fantasy, Pokemon, Zelda, and so we have new ones coming out. So the 5 that just came out, D&D, The Gamer's Journey, stuff like that. Those ones just kind of came out recently. We went on The Last of Us because of the emotional storytelling that it's found within the game itself, but also we've been told as therapists time and time again that parents are like, why do video games matter? Why does this happen? Why are you doing all this? Well, how do they make sense of it? And they watch the HBO show and they're like, this is a great story. And most of the gamers like will turn sideways to me like, yeah, you get to play it in the game. Like, you are the story of the game. And it starts to create those clicks for parents to know that, oh, that's why these games are important, because these are you're experiencing it, that loss, that ability to survive, the heartbreak, or even like the intensity and the adrenaline rushes that you see in the show. You are physically doing that. Which is huge.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about play therapy as a concept, because I think it's going to be framing a lot of our discussion of what transpires in the book and the concepts that you bring up. But a lot of folks aren't as familiar with play therapy. It's a new kind of emerging segment, in psychology, which is a relatively new field too. So it's kind of on that leading edge, maybe not quite as much as before, but I'll let you tell us kind of a little bit about the history and then where it's specifically applicable when it comes to video games and storytelling.
Yeah, so I'm not a registered play therapist. I'm going to say that first and foremost.
I'm not a registered play therapist. Wait, are you?
I'll never tell.
Okay. If we're giving caveats, I want in on it.
Just making sure, in case I say something that a play therapist may disagree with. So play therapy is the idea of utilizing any sort of games that are out there, the emotion storytelling through anything that kind of comes into life. It could be literally a flashcards. It could be a video game. It could be a board game. It could be, let's tell our own story. I mean, things that I have like literally right here on my desk are little story cubes right here.
Love it.
You can use that in a play therapy sense.
Got mine right here, buddy.
Yeah. I've got the orange ones right there, and I've got the blue ones too.
Yeah. My wife got me this crocheted frog.
Oh, we're doing those? Yeah.
We're just. I don't have a crochet. Oh man!
Look at Wade.
Mine says you've totally guac this. So, and so there we're never gonna get through this.
If you're having a good time,
we are having a good time. So play therapy is the use of the social emotional play in the therapy realm. It can go through a lot of different lenses, a lot of different ways, but it's really connecting with the child, the adolescent, even sometimes the adults, because adults, we're play's driven out of us. And as you can just see from that last moment, I mean, play is still very much alive. We just got to engage with it in some ways.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's just a different way of kind of exploring different parts of ourselves in a safe environment that really doesn't have consequences.
Yeah.
How has the reception been from your clients? Like, I think that is the thing that a lot of therapists and a lot of professionals that I talk to, they're like, it's fine as an icebreaker, but when it comes to real therapy, quote unquote, have you found strong results in that respect, or is it more of like a vehicle to get to deeper conversations and questions that would connote real therapy?
So I would say both.
Okay.
Both things are there. So people who are not trained on how to utilize geek culture in different ways, absolutely, it's a vehicle to build up some rapport. It's a vehicle to make sure that the client's thinking differently about certain stuff. It's a means to an end. But if you really, really want to get at what does this mean to someone, you got to go deeper. You got to go into why does this go into their essence, their soul, their ego, their self, their access, all of those different types of parts. And that's where that specialized, in my opinion, training kind of comes on it. We even came up with I'll call it a plug and play model type scenario to people who may not be aware of it, but currently we call it a sociocultural mythos model.
That just rolls right off the tongue.
I know, right? Schism. Like it's perfect. It's
great.
It's just great. And so we basically take like whatever it is, anime, video games, D&D, and you start plugging in, you start working through the different caveats of the gameplay itself, and you start looking at, well, if this character has done this type of thing, and you're having trouble with this, where is the disconnect for this? Because if your character can do it, why can't you? And I'm simplifying it very, very down very quickly for us, and it kind of works in a very similar way. Is that we're utilizing a little bit of CBT, some irrational cognitions. We're utilizing some Jungian ideas, some mythos, our own personal hero. We're utilizing some different parts of psychology. But if you go in this right order, if you go into exploring these different types of things, you literally have like a whole intervention built into into the session for you. That sometimes takes 15 minutes, sometimes it takes a whole 35 because the client doesn't is having a hard time. They're like having that mental block of like, I don't understand why this is important. You're like, because you haven't made the connection yet. And so it's like, how do we drive this forward? And when clients can see that, let's say they play Final Fantasy or they play The Last of Us, they play Legend of Zelda because maybe they have an orphan archetype, maybe they've been hurt, maybe they've been traumatized, you have to have a found community. All those types of things are vastly important to who they are and how they became who they are. And if we can understand where we have come from, we are going to understand where we're going to go.
Yeah.
So from a practical sort of method, I kind of want to follow in on this.
We got to define a couple terms.
Okay, define the terms, then I've got to follow up on that one.
Seriously writing everything down, you'd be like, all right, start defining.
No, you're good. There's only one that we're really talking. So you said CBT. I assume we're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. Can we get a one sentence-ish explanation of what that is and why it's relevant to what we're talking about?
Yeah, so CBT is the idea of utilizing irrational cognitions, behaviors, and stuff like that. It's a very three-part system. If you have an irrational cognition, it leads to an irrational behavior, which leads to maladaptive behaviors in your life.
Yeah, the best explanation that I've heard is that it's not so concerned with the complete root cause of every issue in your life, especially if there's like traumatic response or actions being taken. For example, they went and tried to stop people from stabbing each other in a country, and the cognitive behavioral therapist said the root cause of the stabbing is less important than perpetuating the stabbings. So let's stop the stabbings, then we'll have a chance to get to the root cause. Yeah. And that was kind of a landmark thing. That's my
makes sense
explanation of it. Okay, go ahead.
So let's say that you have somebody come in and they are a huge fan of The Last of Us, and they're wanting to do some work on themselves and have some professional help with that. How might you help someone using The Last of Us as they're playing through beginning to end, or as they're kind of considering the story beats beginning to end? How would you help them think through things in that deeply reflective way?
That's a good question. So it kind of depends on how fast they're going to go through it.
Sure.
And so generally when we are utilizing a video game, we're trying to slow them down a little bit because video games are going to try to like speed you up to keep you going. And so it's like, if you want to get the best out of what you're kind of experiencing and what you're making sense of yourself, you have to slow down and you have to take time to comprehend it. I think my wife said this next phrase, in my opinion, the best. Instead of reacting, you are trying to respond. Responding takes longer to do than reacting. Reacting is me just being like this. Responding is me taking that moment to really reflect upon what occurred. And it could be a moment, it could be 30 minutes, it could be 4 hours, it could be time in the future that you then would have a response when you feel ready to do it. That's what we would start with, is seeing how fast they were kind of going through it. And then what's starting to catch their eye? Why is a certain character or decision more important? Did you discover some of the different things about it, about the areas, or did you just blow through them? So it starts giving us an idea of, do they pay attention to the grander scheme of things? Do they only pay attention to what's in front of them? Are they aware of what's going on in the world around them? It starts being able to parse those things together for us.
How do you know when someone needs to respond and reflect on something? Like, how do you help someone understand, hey, do you realize that was a big moment for you? What are some of the markers, so that, especially our viewers, we get comments all the time saying, this part meant something to me. Okay. Like, how do you really qualify or quantify that, even for somebody that really doesn't know? They're just like, that part was awesome.
It's a great question. So it's easier when you have a partner that can help you through it, or someone that can kind of work your way through that. And so when you find yourself, let's say someone wants, we'll use relationship therapy. I'm not a relationship therapist or anything like that. I can use some of the basic things, but people don't come to me for that, or for couples therapy or anything like that. When someone makes a bid, which is like, I'm inviting you into my world, in a sense, we're bidding for you to come in and engage yourself with me. We are literally sometimes going to say yes, no. If our immediate response is no, that's a reaction, because we have not given it thought. If our immediate response is, let me think about that for a couple minutes, you're looking to respond. And so it's the reaction is that knee-jerk reaction, versus that response is something that feels a little bit more logical, has been thought out, and is like, has like a little bit of method to it.
So when someone has that spark where they're recognizing, okay, maybe there's a thread that is sticking up and this meant something to me, or this elicited a reaction for me that maybe I don't understand, or maybe I get parts of it. How do you encourage folks to start to pull that thread? Because it seems that we are existing in a culture that is moving quickly, right? Mm-hmm. Video games, you said, are meant to speed us up. Yeah. There are gameplay loops that are meant to keep us engaged, right? And we've had a lot of studies and research that have gone into how to keep a player engaged and progressing forward, which is great. And you have really great narrative games that help with the pacing, that force you to take some time to reflect. You know, we talk about the Final Fantasies who have that time. The Last of Us clearly has that time. I'm reminded of Ellie's journal as a major moment of reflection. Yeah. They have Ellie stop and write something in the journal, but they don't show you what she's writing. So it elicits a curiosity to make you kind of reflect. So for us as players, how and what advice do you give to folks when you're thinking about, okay, I want to slow down, but I just kind of don't know how to. I have a hard time being present in this moment and really not just getting past the emotion that this elicited to get to the next emotion. I need to do some processing. What does that look like?
That's a good question. So everyone's going to be a little bit different. So what my wife and I, we have found for us in our relationship, what's happened is that if we're having a concern, we actually will send each other memes. We'll send each other videos that we see online to kind of be like, I wasn't able to put this to words, but this video, this meme, this kind of gets what I was trying to say. And it opens it up to being curious. That's our number one thing, is that curiosity is what you said, writing in the journal. You have to be curious to the moment. You have to be open to the idea. James Hellman, he's a famous psychoanalysis individual. He's passed away, unfortunately, I think in like 2011, I think. He wrote this book called Myths to Live By. And it talks about the idea that us as humans, we like to work in the binary component. It's either this or it's this, and there's nothing in between. And our job is for reflection upon that, and is to start to get outside of that duality component, because when we get stuck in thinking it's either this or this, it gets rid of everything else, any other possibility that's out there. And that the whole point of life is to experience, to enjoy, to do something different. And you can't be stuck in a binary component for it.
That's so true. I love that. So then if you were going to issue a practical challenge or encouragement to someone who's listening to this, just a great place to start, a semi-universal challenge to a pretty nuanced concept. So I understand that this is not a one-size-fits-all question. What would be a good challenge, a place to start? What's a practical action step to just help somebody pause, take a deep breath, and move at least a little bit more towards that kind of reflection and responding rather than reacting, even if it's just quacking like a duck in the moment or whatever it is.
Those new little fidget toys, little quack, 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 and hit on things. I want them. I don't need them, but I want them.
Well, I've been living that in human form for my years on this earth. So.
One of the things that I would always kind of recommend, and I learned this through going through Jungian analysis, is that if we think of ourselves as flowers, as a plant, right? As a plant that is either being nourished or it's being malnourished, in a sense. If we give ourselves an object, we've already now broken ourselves out of a binary thing because we're now using our imagination. We're using what's in an image in our mind. Then the next question is, what does your flower, your plant look like? Is it nice and bright and green and healthy? Is it a little withered? Is it lacking some water? Is it lacking something else? And then the third part of that is, what is something that happened today that either malnourished your plant or give it nourishment? And so those are the things that kind of like start bringing in very, very simple thing. That's like a quick 5-10 minute thing that anyone can do.
I'm feeling quite therapized. Thank you.
Very nice. Very nice. Shifting gears, after all, this is a gaming podcast. So we want to talk a little bit about some of the concepts of the game. And I think that what you've just said about curiosity and certainty, and the tension that we have going between those. We want to live in a world with certainty, but life really flourishes in curiosity as we break through and build new perspectives on what we're observing. So many people want to talk about The Last of Us in really the final decision of part one, Joel, right? Did Joel do the right thing? And people speak with incredible certainty, but I've found that the conversation is a lot more nuanced than that as you offer that perspective and posture of curiosity. Like, what would you have done? Why would you have done that? And to hear what parents would do versus those without children and all of that kind of stuff. I want to know, as you were playing The Last of Us for the first time, how did you find moments that were worth responding to, and how did you?
Oh, man. So as a parent, I will definitely say that when you have kids, we talk about this as therapists all the time. If you're a therapist without kids, like, your response to managing difficult behaviors and kids kind of being kids is vastly different. Like, we're talking like polar opposites of when you have kids and you're a therapist. And it's because there's such a protective factor, and you have to see through what's going on in the moment for them. So if a kid's whining, a kid is throwing a tantrum, it's not about the tantrum that's going on right now. It's really about what are the needs not being met, and what do we have to do in order to try to alleviate this difficulty that they are experiencing in this exact moment. And so my daughter is she's just like me, and I am literally screwed on so many levels when she made years, because she has that feistiness and that, I can't do it, watch me do it type of scenario, which I love, and I am letting that thrive in her because it's just only going to do good things.
A lot
Yeah.
of I really deserve this moments.
Yeah. This is my karma, guys. This is my karma.
I worked at a summer camp when I first graduated high school, and I was responsible for children. And every weekend after the week of camp, I would call my mom and say, "Mom, do you remember when I was a kid and I would do this?" She's like, "Yeah." I said, "I'm really sorry."
Yeah. You learn, right?
My mom loved it.
Yeah, and so to answer your question, as I go through video games, as I go through, and this does not just apply to Last of Us, this applies to was it New Horizons as well? Is that the one with the red-headed person? I haven't played that. in years.
Horizon
Zero
New
Dawn?
Dawn. Yeah,
Horizon New
Zero
Dawn. Yeah,
Aloy.
I like that one too. Is that after we're doing something, and like when I find my moments in talent trees. Is where it is. Is like, what do I want to do? How do I play this game? What is the way that I want to get? Normally, when I play a game, I want high power and stealth. That's my go-to. Because if you can't see me, I'm going to kill you.
Okay.
That's how it works. And if I can make that happen in these games, I am hands down going to play that way. Yeah. And that's the way, the style that I like to play, because I don't want you to see what's coming. I want to be the one that creates that narrative in that life, in that game itself. Those decisions are mine to take, not for someone else to give. It's
Methodical
crazy.
strategy and ruthless execution.
I love it.
Absolutely.
I'm getting a lens to how you run so many different enterprises as well.
It can be very ruthless in some ways, but it's also coming from a caring nature, nurturing component. It's like, this is a really good idea. However, have you thought of these types of things that could happen? That's a very nurturing component of being like, have you thought all outside this, or are we trying to square peg round hole this? Type scenario. And that's the easiest way. And if that doesn't work, then you start getting a little bit firmer, and then you're really like, look, man, this doesn't look like it's going to work, and here's the reason it's not going to.
It's also, I think, a good energy organizationally around injustice too.
Is it?
I think that a lot of the time we don't feel like frustration, anger, that meticulous planning is a good justification to approach good works. But we're supposed to be, I think, angry when things aren't correct, when things aren't right. And so, what we do and how we channel that anger is fine, but to abandon it as a motivating factor in order to help people really strips us from a lot of the energy and focus that can happen. And so it can create a lot of pretty hollow philanthropic work, I think. And it sounds like that's not a factor of what you kind of do. I have questions relating to the book specifically, Wade, if we're ready to get into.
Let's do it.
Before you do that, Evan, I'm going to give you two things on that one. One, there's always an emotion underneath anger. Anger is just the easiest expression you can express. If you're angry, it means that something else is kind of going on, and your job is to figure out what's actually occurring on that one. The second one, I don't remember what it was at this point, so it'll come.
Well, I'll go get my feelings wheel and make sure that I work through the anger slice of the pie, and then I'll watch Inside Out 3 times. And then
There you go.
Good prescription,
That'll work.
really.
I got my feelings wheel prayer beads, and then I'll call you after, which will be great. So I have some rapid fire questions about some interesting things with the book. That'll be quick. So you ready to play rapid fire?
I love rapid fire. Let's do
Okay,
that.
great. Wade doesn't know I'm going to do this. Did you ever get tired of writing the Last of Us video game and TV show over and over and over again?
Oh my gosh. So we reading it over and over, yes, because I'm like, guys, we can do this differently, but also like that's part of the job as the main editor, if kind of is on true, is you're gonna see everyone use the same introduction. You're like, how can we rework this? And it's like, literally, there's 12 chapters. You're saying the same thing 12 different ways, and that's the challenge as an editor. Is the ability to be able to say the same thing in multiple different ways.
Right.
Did you think about making an acronym out of it? Did you consider it?
We kind of did, of kind of being like, here's the beginning part of the introduction. This is an acronym. Here's how you just deal with it. And we're like, no, it takes away from that flow of everything we've done in the past. We can make it work again.
Okay, other rapid fire question then. if I'm correct, you authored the first chapter of the book, correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
That
So-
is like a mindful, not a mindful, but like a movie charismatic type thing. I'm forgetting the words right now.
Yeah. So what is it like to be that first chapter? Did you write that before you knew what everybody else was going to write? Did you write that as a way to introduce and try and think about the whole project? Tell us a little bit about the pressure that comes with being that first opening chapter when your name's on it, but really it's a collection of really expertise kind of from a variety of different fields.
It's a lot. Normally, I don't write the first chapter. I write the introduction. And
okay.
Usually, what my thing in that introduction always comes after I've read all the chapters and they're finalized, they're set in their ways.
Right.
We're there. And so, writing the first chapter, this one as a visual masterpiece in storytelling.
Yeah.
Not just in the game, but also in the show as well. That came after watching the show and before the book was done. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want to be influenced by what other people are kind of talking about. Because you want someone to open in that first chapter is so important because it sets the tone for the rest of the book. And so whenever we are doing new chapters and everything comes in, the hardest decision is, what is the tone of the book? What do you want this to kind of be? So like when we have the Psychology of Bluey coming out, in that one, that first chapter sets the tone for us. Why is parenting without pause important? And you're like, oh, here's the whole thing. This is the whole point of why we should be doing this.
I love it. Okay, this concludes Rapid Fire with Evan. And thank you. It's a nice break.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up chapter 1 in the book because you're right. It does set the tone for the rest of it. And I think that just as you say that, The Last of Us is a masterpiece of emotional storytelling, this chapter is a masterclass in how to dissect and experience the rest of what this book has to offer. You said there's one paragraph that I was like, okay, this is like the core for me, at least, where you said the game's morally ambiguous characters challenge players' preconceived notions of right and wrong, forcing them to confront the complexities of the human condition. Characters such as Joel, Ellie, and their allies and adversaries are neither wholly good nor wholly evil, but instead exist in shades of gray reflecting the moral ambiguity of the world they inhabit. Just like that phrase, those two phrases encapsulate what it means to really play this game, I think. And to some degree, every chapter following that one touches on that. It's like we're not dealing with your basic good guys and bad guys sort of scenario here, but the world isn't like that. And so what does it mean for us to see these sort of things? When you were first playing the game, again, I know I keep going back to this, but I've found that everybody has a first response to this game. Did you know the magnitude of what this game could be, and like if the world could see this, like if it could be an HBO show, does it touch at a core aspect of the human experience, and why is that even important in video games as a medium?
This is a good question because I think that we've had quite a few games that kind of do this type of existential looking at ourselves as it's a mirror, as a reflection. The game itself is a reflection of society, even if we were on a different timeline. And I think that in itself is very important just as an initial reaction for anyone to look at. There's other games that have done similar things where you can go morally ambiguous, but it doesn't have the same realistic experience that we have as people. Like in our day, like obviously we're recording this right now, but like our world is kind of on fire right now in a different way. And there's a lot, I think, that games give us a lens in which to experience the world around us in a way that's in a visual storytelling component that makes it be able to bring insight into what is actually going on. Most of us won't pay attention to what's going on around us, except in our little microcosms. But the games themselves, someone could be having it here in the United States, someone could be going playing it in New Zealand, someone could be playing it over in the Great Britain, and they can relate it in different ways to what's going on in their immediate world, and it's the kind of like the onion type scenario as it kind of goes forward in the different lenses, the different circles as they kind of get farther and farther away from the core.
I remember early on when I had first finished The Last of Us, I couldn't shut up about it, like a lot of people. I would talk to various people. And I remember, I think I was on the phone with my mom, right? And it was 2013. And she's like, what were you up to this weekend? And I was like, I finished a game called The Last of Us. She said,
crying alone in my room.
Did you win? Did you have fun? And I was like, trying to find the words to describe what I had experienced. And she said, well, what's the game about? Because it was clear that I was processing something. And she was like, what's going on? And I remember saying, it's kind of a zombie game, but it's not. It's like about people and human relationships. And I was like, Mom, did you ever have a decision about me that you wondered if it was the right choice or not? And she was like, was this a zombie game? Or was this like a...
She's about to tell you like you're an oops baby or something?
Right. I was like, was there, like, I'm just curious because like I don't have kids and like, what changed? And it really started this whole conversation. She said, but you were playing a zombie game this weekend. And I was like, yeah. So when the show comes out, a couple years ago, I guess, I'm, for whatever reason, I think I'm home from travel or something. I ended up staying the night with my mom. And, I was like, hey, this show is on HBO. We should watch it. And so we watched a couple of episodes. She was like, this is a video game? What? And then a few episodes in, she was like, I can't believe that this is a video game. We've got to keep watching this. And I ended up staying the whole weekend. We binged the entire season. And she said, I didn't know that it could be like this. And so the thing that's what's really interesting to me about this particular story is that it transcends gaming. It transcends just like the gamer scope of life and lens. For those who are just experiencing The Last of Us for the first time, maybe through this lecture series, what is it about this game, the storytelling, just in a quick pitch, why The Last of Us and why does it matter? Do you think?
Oh, so The Last of Us touches on so many storytelling and so many points that are so prevalent in our society today. Like literally dozens upon dozens. It doesn't matter what you do in this world or how you experience it. You're going to find a way to relate to this game. And this game is going to relate to you in a different way. It's going to change your perspective. It's going to enhance your vision, your ability to understand the world around you based off the choices, the storyline, and the ending of this. It's going to make you think. This is not a game that you just put down and you're like, yeah, that was cool. That was a good one. I beat the game. It's done. I won. This game is now you lost. What did you lose? How do we recover from this type of thing? And how has this hit me in some sort of more deep intentional component?
So why, like this is the thing, like my mom said, it's just a zombie game.
Is it?
How can a zombie game do this to people? Make us delve so deeply psychologically that it's like, okay, because we've seen The Walking Dead. We've seen, Night of the Living Dead and all that kind of stuff. What's the difference here, in your opinion?
This is based upon a community that has been ravaged time and time again. The relationships, in my opinion, are deeper. The Walking Dead, look, the first couple seasons were great and stuff like that, and then it just turned into how do I survive? How do I carnage my way out of this situation? And it got outside of what I think the original core intention of it was. It's like the writing took a different turn.
I think that show endured 2 writer strikes too.
Yeah, I think it did too. Yeah.
Yeah, and
which is incredible to run for 18 years and make it through 2 writer strikes.
Yeah, and make it through 2 of them. Yeah, I think The Last of Us hits us in a way that's just different because it's not just pace. Yes, there's going to be killing. Yes, there's going to be survival, but that's not the hallmark of the game. The hallmark of the game is to explore, what does it mean to be alone? What does it mean to have different types of bonds, to have huge trust issues, to be able to rely on someone else other than yourself. I mean, those are core questions, I think, that we have about ourselves and the people that are close to us and not close to us.
You talk a lot.
Terrific.
Sorry, wait, go ahead.
No, that's terrific. And I think that's really it. Like, it's not zombies, it's not pandemics or anything like that, but it really is, what does it mean to be alone? What does it mean to lose everything? And what does it mean to try to, as they say in the show, endure and survive? And what does that even look like? So
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. And I'm sorry to belabor that point, but I feel like for an introduction to this story, it's so important to say this is a story about exactly what you said, being alone. So if you've ever felt that, there's something to take from this story. And then
Being alone
so on
is
and so forth.
not a bad thing. That like people in our day and age, in like the tech world, and like some psychologists that are against video games and stuff, they're like, you're just making yourself alone. Like, being alone is not a bad thing.
No.
We all need our own personal time. We all need some time to deeply reflect upon what's going on. And also, just because you're alone playing a game or something like that doesn't mean the rest of your world is alone as well. It serves a purpose. Humans are social creatures by nature. Absolutely. We band together, we work together, we help each other. We also need time to be to ourselves. We need time to reflect. Otherwise, those things get pushed aside and we don't become who we really kind of want to be, or who we're meant to be. It should probably be a better way of saying it.
Well,
As
and
an
there's-
introvert, I'm so grateful you just said that.
Yeah.
I'm going to send that to the farthest reaches of the internet. So
They'll probably agree with you right away.
they will.
Well, there's a distinction too between being alone and loneliness, right?
Yeah.
Like, we have a loneliness epidemic. We probably don't spend enough time alone. Like, if we're honest.
That's a good way of saying it, Evan.
And like, the UK has a minister of loneliness now. Like, it's a health official that is in charge of monitoring and advising loneliness in their society. And I think loneliness is akin to like significant like cigarette consumption as far as like how it impacts your life. But I shouldn't say that statistic without having it in front of me. I have a question about the delivery mechanism that gets us to that relatable nature. Anthony, you describe the game as extremely relatable characters in a setting that none of us can probably really relate to, but then you use it to kind of curtail into this idea of a flow state. I wonder if you could talk to us about why a flow state is important and how this game uses that flow state to kind of usher you into that delivery mechanism for some of the story concepts. Because I think when we understand, okay, listen, I'm getting lost in time in this flow state, which you're going to explain for us, and then now I've arrived at this story beat or this moment, and I kind of feel like this fast-paced, my blood is pumping, I'm engaged in the story, and now it's forcing me to reflect with my nature as a human, but I just finished bashing a bunch of people with bricks running through a hallway, right? So like, what is it that makes this so captivating, and what is it so special about how the story uses it to deliver its themes and accomplish its goals?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. We'll start with the flow, the concept of flow. Flow is a journey in itself. It's when you find yourself immersed within a specific book. It can be cooking. It could be anything. You enter this state of flow where you're literally just autonomically and automatically just doing things. Like, you're not even thinking about it. They become reactions. And those reactions are there to just keep you going forward. You lose sight of kind of everything that's going on. When we talk to video gamers, and when we pick up that controller, we call it that you're going into a flow state. That flow state is not a bad thing because you're projecting a part of yourself onto the character. The character itself, it becomes part of you, and you're projecting all parts of what you believe the character should be onto that one. When you put the controller down, the game gets turned off, or you hit a point where it's like a cutscene, or you accomplish something really hard, and it's now downtime. That's when that projection is going to come back in. And so everything that you've been projecting upon that character is going to come back into what you are as a person. And that flow state gets broken. And that broken state is not a bad thing at all. It means that what your projections, what you thought the character should be, doesn't match what actually came back, or is it now all of a sudden you're like, oh man, that's not how I envisioned this kind of going. And I don't know how I feel about this. That's the point where there's that reflection that needs to kind of come into play.
You have nailed something. I wish you had been on the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth lecture series, because I'm going to give a caveat quickly for our viewers that love Final Fantasy VII. Have you played Rebirth by any chance?
I have not, but I played the old ones.
Okay, well, totally different. In Rebirth,
well, that doesn't matter. On to what I want to say.
In Rebirth, one of the critiques that a lot of people have, and you have just encapsulated this, so our video editors are going to need to clip this one. One of the critiques that people have of the remake is that it does not allow for there to be proper processing and reflection of intense moments. So you get into these flow states, right? But then it's jarringly interrupted, and there is no time for that kind of integral processing that can happen, that downtime where you're like, okay. And I think that what you've described is this amazing gameplay loop that keeps us hooked and deeply emotionally invested. Whereas if we don't have that, we're immediately ejected from it. So Last of Us pacing is like chef's kiss over and over. It's just amazing. So anyway, I just wanted to call that out for our Rebirth fans. That was for you guys. So
let's do just a quick time check, because I know that we're approaching some things and everything. Anthony.
Yeah, we're going to.
I think we got about 10 minutes left, I think.
We're going to wrap up.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, I'll clip back in here after that marker. So we have obviously a million questions about the content of the book and all of the different things that it do. But I think there's one concept that I want to explore and get your perspective on, just kind of finally, because I hadn't really thought about our modern world and environment in this sense. And in Roy Wang's discussion on the blending of virtual and tangible worlds in their chapter, they talk about this idea that we exist now in a bit of a mixed reality, and that we have to learn as humans how to exist in this mixed reality. But my words, not theirs, that's not really something we've had to do before as a species. So we're learning and taking what we have gained in human knowledge, and then we're trying to figure out what you do when you have access to the same information as a presidential briefing would have in the 1920s every morning when you wake up. Like, we're not really made to have as much access to the information and the immediacy that we necessarily do, and that is a part of that mixed reality. From your perspective, and in working with them in the way that they wrote that chapter and having edited it, what is important about this mixed reality? And from your clinical perspective, how do we even start to navigate and understand this world? And what are those implications?
Oh, boy. So mixed reality in the sense of that we have information at our fingertips is vastly, vastly important, because we also have misinformation at our fingertips as well. And so it's really about taking the time, and again, I'm going to go back to this reacting versus responding.
Great.
Is thinking about what I just read, what I just watched, what is occurring in this world right here. Does this logically make sense? Why do I have this illicit fear, need of, or this feeling of fear immediately come up? I trying to be poked and prodded into experiencing this type of fear, this type of feeling, or is this a naturally occurring component of what's actually occurring in the world right now? So like we have so much, and that's always one of the reasons why I always encourage people to respond, do not react, because reaction creates chaos and frustration and fear. We are humans, and we should not be focused on just living by a fear-based mentality. We should be looking for a growth mindset. We should be looking for some place to continue to grow as human beings. That's literally our purpose. Our existential purpose is to figure out, what do we want to be as a person? And as we tell our kids, everything in this world is at your fingertips except for time. The one thing you will never get back is time. So it's about how do you want to take that moment, those moments, those different blocks of time, and how do you want to react or respond to them? That's the biggest thing that we tend to do. And so when Roy wrote that chapter, I thought it was really, really well done, because it brings out the intricacies that 10 years ago we didn't have this amount of information. 10 years from now, we're going to have 6 to 10 times more information at our fingertips every day. There's already starting to be some components of, like, say, AI coming into existence. And as if you're a professor, you know what I'm talking about. This is the whole problem on this one. Is that when we look at where the world is going, AI at some point, probably in the next 10 to 20 years, if it hasn't already, is going to be kind of like self-aware. And it's kind of like a really cool, it's fun to think about. It's terrifying in other ways, but it's fun to think about, is because was the AI already there and we just discovered it, or we were made aware of it, or did we really create AI? That's the question that comes to mind, right? Is like, did we just become aware that it existed in a medium that we can understand, but maybe like on that fourth dimension, it already existed somewhere. It's already doing something, you know?
Because the requisite knowledge and framework
Exactly.
existed.
It's just like, it's the chicken or the egg, right?
All right,
Like,
listen. Okay, so offline, you're gonna have to tell me you're like in the envelope. This is what denotes artificial general intelligence officially for me. We won't make you say it on stream. Well, I will say, when it relates to this idea of, you know, the time is the thing that we can't recoup. I'll say, as we kind of wrap up, I'm very grateful for your time, and we're grateful for your time here. And I know Wade has a few more questions, and we want to see kind of what's next for you. But this connection between processing, not responding, or not reacting and responding, and then combining that with the fact that we can create safe places to experience these things in play, which I think is the intentionality that video games really provide, is the ability to create that play space to examine and give us the tools and the ability to practice responding in a game setting, and then be able to engage it in our own life. That's a huge takeaway for me, and I'm grateful for your time and grateful for all your work. So thank you for your presence, your response, and your expertise.
Your final segment on growth and fear mindsets.
That's it.
And I feel like The Last of Us creates a playground for us to learn in that. And as we wrap up, I would be very grateful if you would share just maybe a couple of things that our audience and viewers could do during this lecture series as we play The Last of Us together, or maybe as they are playing and reading along in your textbook that we've provided, or in the links below. How might they practice this at the most practical, basic level?
I would say ask yourself kind of like 3 questions: is what happened today? How did it regulate or irregulate my mood? And then 3, how did I react or respond to it?
Yeah. Perfect for in life, perfect for at the end of a gaming session. So that's beautiful. So thank you for that, Anthony. We cannot thank you enough for being a part of this. You know, they say don't meet your heroes because you'll be disappointed. We have not been disappointed. In fact, I'm further enamored with you. So I just want to hang out, by the way. Just be like, let's just talk. And I want to hear your Helldivers strategies
man.
too. So
it's so crazy what we do in that game. It is unfair.
It's the best.
It's
you get to be Francis Ford Coppola and the Doom guy in the same game. It rules.
Absolutely. Rip and tear.
Well, what's
everybody,
next for you?
Yeah.
What would be coming up next on the horizon? Any sneak previews that you want to give? But what would you want to point people to as the next thing that you're focusing on besides this book that we'll be using along with this semester?
So we are doing we have 4 new books that are about to be finished. Well, actually 5 new books that are about to be finished, and we just announced our next 4. So like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Sonic the Hedgehog, One Piece, and there's one other one that I'm blanking on right now that we're always looking for people to write and do things like involve themselves in these types of projects. So those are coming on the horizon. Our goal is to be writing and probably publishing anywhere from 4 to 8 new books a year, just based on evidence-based type stuff, because it's very, very important that people can figure out how these things matter to us and why they matter to us. And as we know, as we've all grown up, any gamer is going to relate to this. Our parents have always told us, this doesn't matter. Why are you doing this? My parents said that. That's why I wrote a parenting book, which they read, and they're like, this makes so much more sense.
I gave that to my doctor.
Yeah.
Because he was struggling with his child playing so much video games. So I was like, here you go. He's like, thank you so much. It's my tone.
It's one of the things that they're like, this makes so much more sense. And now they engage my younger brother a lot differently than they did before. And so it's really about, I think, coming together and really focusing on why these things matter to us, and not negating it, but validating it.
Well, everybody, go and find Anthony and Geek Therapeutics online. We've got links in the description below. Go and buy all of his books, right? All of them, literally. Like, it sounds like there's hundreds and hundreds more to
They're all behind
There's a lot coming.
So
there's
a lot of them, but we've got links in the description, especially to the Last of Us and to the Final Fantasy Psychology of series. But we cannot thank you enough. Thank you all for viewing this episode, as well as we continue our Last of Us lecture series. And as always, we are continuing to look for the light on Mondays with our episode recaps, Tuesday nights with our lecture playthroughs, playing through the segment of the game that corresponds with that week's episode, and then Wednesdays for more expert discussions, interviews, and analysis like this. Thank you so much. And as you are lost in the darkness, remember to find the light. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much to Anthony Bean for the interview. Thanks to Husky by the Geek for our theme music. And thanks to Nick Smith for our graphics. Most of all, thanks to you. This program is brought to you by viewers like you, and we really appreciate you. Hope everything's going great for you, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode.